You are listening to the Two and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
It's Travis Currah and Sheldon Jones. Here we are in the beginning of March. And what a tumultuous time we talked to you during. There's not much to say. I think I've said my piece on the pod before, trying to keep it a football podcast, but these are interesting times, Sheldon.
I know, like John Cena's a heel. Like, what the heck?
For the first time since 2003, remarkably, the Toronto Maple Leafs did not win a playoff series during that span. I just always have to dig at the Leafs when I can. But I did see ya in person this past weekend. Elimination Chamber went down in Toronto, the WWE PLE. I think we surprised you, but it was good to see you, man.
Very much so. It was great to see you, yes. All the boys, most of the boys were able to make it in, and Taylor and a couple other friends. It was an amazing surprise that I think our buddy Jamie and my wife kind of got together on. And it was just very shocking. A large amount of deviled eggs, which were consumed, and just a great time with friends.
Vic's Tavern, we'll give them the free commercial, the 2 and Out bump, the happy hour special of a 99-cent deviled egg. You got to take advantage of that. Like, I don't know, like crush 10 of those before a Rider game. I don't know if it gets much better than that.
Well, they also had a very good matzo sticks.
Oh, yeah.
And the millionaire bacon, which was phenomenal. Amazing food, great times. The room upstairs there, I know we've gone there a few times with the Toronto crew when they come to town, and it's always a fun time there. So Tammy got that place, and just watched some wrestling. Had a few other non-wrestling fan friends come out, and they got to see what we were like in our element, but it was great.
Yeah, shout out to Dave, who he took. I guess they're gone now, so I guess I can spoil the surprise. Dave showed up and he brought you some of his amazing cookies, but he also gave me some for the road. I wasn't supposed to tell anybody, but I've eaten them already, so
statute of limitations is over.
They're gone.
And I surprisingly have some left still.
You do?
They're so good.
They are.
Best cookie I've ever had in my life, man.
Yeah, hopefully we can get some more of those as the season draws near. But we got a lot to get through here. We're at this point of the offseason where it feels so close, but at the same time, it's like, oh man, we still got a lot to do before we get back on the field. Yeah,
I think it's like 92 days until the first game or something like that, but so we're 3 months or so away. We can do this. Things are going to start to heat up soon, and hopefully once we get to the combine, and then after the combine's the draft, and then training camp shortly after. So we got these few little hills to climb, and then we'll be back.
Yeah, and I really hope that this year, more than ever, the stands are able to be packed at CFL games. And I know with everything going on lately, you see a lot of retail outlets, and for good reason. I'm not blaming them at all, supporting Canadian products, things like that, and the way that the people are really coming together. I feel like it's been a while since we've seen this in Canada, and in a way it makes me feel pretty good. But I would like to think, and I'm not naive enough to know, like if this thing keeps going and it keeps going and keeps going, people might not be able to afford tickets. So if people are, I really hope that they're able to check out some football games this summer, this fall, in Canada, going up into the Grey Cup in Winnipeg. I just know in my heart that very first oh Canada, of the CFL season is going to mean a lot. And I'm really looking forward till we get to that point. There's been some off-the-field stuff going on as well. The BC Lions promoting Rob Ralph to assistant general manager. They've also been able to add scout Will Ark to the team. I guess I'll just say this about the Lions. They've really got a strong organization there when it comes to promoting within. There's so many guys there that have been there for years and years and years, and they move up the ladder, and it seems like the opportunity in that organization to move up is there, and I just think that's really cool. There's a lot of long-term employees in BC, and I know they kind of got chirped a little bit when those report cards came out from the CFLPA back in December, but there's a lot of good people in that BC Lions organization.
Agreed, and especially with Rob here, like he was the director of Canadian Scouting, and their Canadian talent has been getting pretty good over the last number of years. So when you can get a guy like that and promote him to assistant GM, that just bodes well for the Canadian content coming forward, I think, there.
And he's been in the league for a long time. He began his CFL career in Edmonton in 1999, beginning as a video coordinator before being an offensive assistant and then a Canadian scout. So a lot of long-term guys there and still staying in orange and black. And as we stay with the BC Lions, Christian Matt, longtime offensive lineman with the Montreal Alouettes, is now the running backs coach in BC. And then another longtime CFL player, Dakota Prukop, kind of like your journeyman short yardage guy. This guy is very dangerous, and I still think he probably had, and if he had more of an opportunity, he might have been able to start and win some games for some teams there, but he's now the quarterbacks coach in Calgary. An interesting move, I thought, there by the Stampeders.
Yeah, I think it's a good move, though, to be honest. We've seen a fair number of, third string or career third string or second string quarterbacks become successful head coaches in not only the CFL but the NFL and NCAA. There's Ryan Dinwiddie, there's Steve Sarkisian, there's multiple names, right? So those players, they may not be getting the game reps when it comes to playing in the games, but they're always in the playbooks and running the scout team and stuff like that. So they just get that more extra knowledge, I think, when it comes to football. So I see this as a good thing for the Stamps.
Sheldon did mention the Combine, and yes, that is coming up 2 weeks from Friday. The CFL Combine is in Regina. I don't know if this is going to be open to the public like it has been in years past. Do you know anything about that?
I haven't heard. I am going to do some digging, maybe see if can get some sort of media accreditation or something like that and check out some of the stuff. So to be determined if we can get that arranged.
Hey, that would be pretty sweet. They did have the Invitational Combine, and I'm looking at some of the players that are going to be there and just their stats from maybe their final year in U Sports, like Wilfrid Laurier receiver Ethan Jordan, 125 receiving yards a game. 10 receiving touchdowns in 2024. So a dynamite Canadian receiver going into this combine. And then I do look at Isaiah Knight, running back for UBC, 3,603 rushing yards and 21 touchdowns. That's not in one season. Yeah, he had 350 rushing yards a game. But that was his career with the Thunderbirds. He had 914 yards rushing in 2024, which is almost 115 yards a game. And he had 9 touchdowns. So there are a couple guys that are going to be in Regina showing what they can do athletically at the CFL Combine coming up in a couple weeks here. And then before you know it, we're going to be talking about that draft. And this Combine, it seems like there's always sort of an unheralded player, at least one or two, that really shows, how good of an athlete they are. And because a lot of these rookies, when they come into the CFL, they have to impress on special teams for a few years, some of them, before they're ever able to start on offense. So if they're able to show, their speed and their athleticism, and they'll get in on special teams and start contributing that way, and then getting into other parts of the team. But yes, the combine in 2 weeks, and then the draft April 29th. And then, a week after that, rookie camps open. So yeah, before you know it, it'll be here, and we'll be talking about training camp and all the fun things that come with that. But since we last recorded, we did the Grey Cup rewatch, which, man, was a lot of fun. It was also a marathon. I think you needed a couple chiropractor visits to get your back right after that Grey Cup rewatch.
I fixed it on my own, but yes, the current chair that I use on this podcast is not that comfortable for an hour, let alone 4.5.
But I guess that being said, I don't know. Hopefully we can find times to do it. Throughout the season. Just go live in general. It was so cool to have the comments as we were chatting. It just added a whole different element to the show. And maybe certain Sundays this season, as we wrap up a week, we'll be able to come on here live on YouTube and engage that way, because that was a lot of fun. And maybe some more Grey Cup rewatches in the future if Sheldon gets himself a more comfortable chair and can hang out for that long. But it was a blast. And one of the trends that I'm noting when it comes to free agency this year is just the defensive line movement. There has been a lot of shuffling when it comes to the D-line. We'll talk, because there's been a couple teams that actually haven't been too active in free agency. And one of those is Ottawa. They were actually the team that signed more of their pending free agents than any other team, so they're establishing continuity there. They made it back to the playoffs last year for the first time in a while, and the Montreal Alouettes haven't been too busy when it came to free agency as well. I know that they end up bringing in, before free agency, McLeod Bethel-Thompson. He's now the highest paid backup quarterback in the CFL. But they moved on from Cody Fajardo. He's going to Edmonton. He took a $200,000 pay cut to be on with the Elks in 2025. But the big signings from Montreal were on the D-line, extending Mustafa Johnson, extending Dylan Wynn, and also bringing in Sean Oakman, who played with the Argos for a few years, spent last year, I guess halfway through the season, with Edmonton, and now he's in Montreal. I mean, those three guys, they can make things happen on the D-line.
Oh, yeah, and I think, obviously the battle of the trenches is what wins the games, right? So when you see these other teams kind of loading up on their D lines, specifically I'd say kind of Saskatchewan and Edmonton, now Montreal definitely making a run for one of the better updates or strengths, I guess, of the D line.
Let's just stay with the D line for a little bit here, because Toronto's strength, I think, over the last few years has been that D-line. It has been that depth at defensive line. And I feel like I would rather have an average secondary and a dynamite D-line than the other way around.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not saying Toronto's secondary is average, but their D-line was exceptional. And now even some of those depth guys are moving on as well. We look at what Edmonton did, taking three Argos. One that used to be an Elk, Jake Serezna, back in Edmonton. Robbie Smith is in Edmonton, and Jared Brinkman is now in Edmonton, the defensive tackle that I think, quite frankly, is a little bit underrated in the CFL. This guy's a monster if he stays on the field, but this surprised me, Sheldon. The highest paid defensive player in the CFL is now Robbie Smith. I know, and we're coming on we're 2.5 years from that performance. You remember the 2022 Grey Cup in Regina? He did block a field goal. There was also, didn't he take a costly penalty? It was an emotional roller
penalty
coaster.
before, yeah.
Yeah. It was an emotional roller coaster for Robbie Smith in that game. And I know he's Canadian, but the highest paid defensive player in the CFL. I found that one quite interesting.
I did too. I think I could probably think of, maybe 10 players I would put above him and maybe would make the highest paid defensive player. But obviously, Ed Hervey, he was very upfront about not wanting to really spend money at the receiver position. But if he's willing to, put this much money in Robbie Smith, maybe he's valuing the defense over the offense, and the old saying, defense wins championships. So now it's up to Robbie Smith to earn this contract, and often, and this is unfortunate, but every year it comes out this player is the highest paid at this position, and often it doesn't seem to, they don't seem to be the best player in the league at that position in that contract year. So hopefully he's able to do that. I know it just puts a little bit of an extra target on your back and you're going to get double teamed and possibly triple teamed, but it'll be interesting to watch to see if he can earn this paycheck.
Yeah, you know what? It's something for schmucks like us to talk about. But somebody has to be the highest paid, I guess. And good for them.
Well, yeah, I'm happy when players get these big contracts. I love that the cap went up $400,000 this year. Hopefully it can keep going up every year and more of these players can get paid more money. It's just, you hate to be that label as the most highest paid and then have a down year. So you got to really make sure you show out.
The Riders, they gained some, bodies on the D-line. They also lost some mainstays on the D-line over the last couple of years. Some of these guys, I think, encountering some health issues, haven't been able to stay on the field and lacking consistency because of that. I think when the Riders re-signed Malik Carney and they were able to bring in Mike Rose, I know Shane Ray is a bit of a flyer there, some health issues coming back into the CFL after doing well with the Argos a few years ago. I think people were kind of wondering, is Micah Johnson going to be still a Rough Rider, 36 years old, and he is still a Rough Rider. So I think that D-line in Sask is still very, very strong.
Yeah, honestly, also... I want to give a shout out to Piffles. They had Luke Mullender on this episode, and he actually talked a lot about the Riders D-line. So definitely go give that a listen if you're interested in that. But yeah, it's definitely one of the strengths of the team. And they may not get those sacks, and they may because last year the Riders didn't have a huge amount of sacks, but they were able to disrupt the quarterbacks, and that's what you need to do. You need to disrupt the quarterbacks so that the receivers have to put in extra work, the O-line have to put in extra work, and as Luke said on the podcast there, you can draw a lot of holding penalties if you can move the offensive line around. So I'm ecstatic about what the Riders have done with their D-line and their O-line, to be honest. But I think, Montreal, Edmonton, and Saskatchewan are probably the top three D-lines in the league right now, I would say.
And this brings us to Toronto, a very strong D-line over the past few years. And Jake Ceresna, a big part of that. Now in Edmonton. Flo Alarde, a big part of that. Now back in Calgary. But the Argos were able to bring in some guys that were pretty highly touted in Saskatchewan. Brian Cox Jr., I'm a fan of the way this guy plays. And to see him on the field with Wynton McManus, I think is going to be fierce in Toronto. Anthony Lanier, who had, I think, his best seasons playing alongside Pete Robertson in Saskatchewan, dealt with a lot of injuries in Saskatchewan. I think he's got potential. The guy can be a beast, and he's going to be on the field for Toronto. DeMarcus Christmas at times looked really good for Sask in limited time, kind of a rotational guy. But now he's in Toronto getting a bit of an opportunity that way. So Toronto still able to bring in some impact players to their defense. It seems like Toronto, hey, look at last year. A lot had them written off early in the year, and for good reason. They didn't have their starting quarterback for half the year, and they didn't have their starting quarterback for the Grey Cup, and they still won the damn thing. So the Argos, they're a team that I still don't want to discount at all.
No, it's that old saying when you win championships and you build teams, you're going to have other teams come and raid your pantry. But the past couple seasons, even though the pantry of the Argos has gotten raided, they've had backup cans and backup goods ready to go that have showed out. And just those three D linemen that you mentioned going over from Saskatchewan, a lot of people have been harping on Jeremy O'Day and saying he's not doing a good job when it comes to bringing in talent. Well, those are three guys that I think could play on any D line, and they were three guys that deemed expendable in Saskatchewan. When you have Anthony Lanier as a healthy scratch in the West Final, that says something. So, I loved him as a rider. And like you said, when, Patrick Mahomes' mentor, Pete Robinson, was playing with him, they did magic together. But the Riders still, as I said before, have one of the best D-line, and they don't have those three guys there anymore.
Toronto was also able to bring in CFL veteran Seontae Evans, DB. They re-signed running back Kadeem Carey, and they also brought back quarterback Cameron Dukes. So the quarterback room staying the same in Toronto this coming year. They brought in a couple Edmonton Elks last year. Canadian receiver Herji Mayala, I thought, had a resurgence in Edmonton. He's got another opportunity here in Toronto, and also defensive back Darius Bratton is going to Toronto, and defensive lineman Celestin Haba, who spent the past couple years with Winnipeg. I think that about covers sort of the D-line shuffles. There's been some movements in Hamilton. Julian Hauser, the D lineman who was a Ticat, spent the past couple seasons with Calgary, is going back to Hamilton. They've also been able to extend D lineman Casey Sales, and on the defense, the Ticats able to sign Reggie Stubblefield out of Montreal. So that's a big addition to that Ticat defense. They were able to bring in running back Johnny Augustine, the Canadian that spent the last several years with Winnipeg. I hope he gets a little bit more of an opportunity in Hamilton. We know that he was behind Brady Oliveira, and before that, I think Augustine's been there since the Andrew Harris days in Winnipeg. But when he's gotten onto the field, he's been able to make plays too.
Oh yeah, I always thought that he was one of the kind of the next running back gem that was just waiting for that opportunity. So it's good to see him move on to Hamilton, where maybe he will get that opportunity.
Brendan O'Leary Orange also re-signing in Hamilton, that big-bodied receiver staying in black and gold. And the other moves for those Edmonton Elks, like if Grey Cups were won in February, their fans very excited. I mentioned them bringing in Ceresna and Robbie Smith and Jared Brinkman. They also bring in veteran D lineman Brandon Barlow. So it's going to be a completely different D line this upcoming year. But bringing in receiver Stephen Dunbar Jr. I know Geno Lewis is out to the East Division. Dunbar Jr. is not Geno Lewis, but a very steady veteran receiver who's had an interesting path. Spent a lot of time with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and then he goes to Edmonton, and he ended up, I think, having a good season with them. but a bad season for the team. You know what I mean? And then, and that was off his time being in the XFL. And then he goes back to Hamilton last year and has 75 catches, 1,159 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He ended up having a good year with those Ticats. Now he's back west with Edmonton. So I think that's a pretty solid signing by the Elks.
I do too. Hopefully for them it works out a little better. That they can get some more wins and he can contribute a little bit more. But I've always thought he's a really good player, and he seems like the kind of guy who fights for those extra yards and gets open on second down, and just the type of guy that you need in the CFL.
The Calgary Stampeders end up re-signing Logan Bonner, the quarterback that was it against Edmonton that he started and threw 5 interceptions. Yeah, but he's staying around.
Rough go.
Staying around in Calgary.
Hey, they need a new short yardage guy unless they're going to have PJ Walker do that, or if they're going to risk Vernon Adams. So if he can get in there and try to be the new Tommy Stevens there, then that might be good for him.
They were also able to sign Canadian DB Godfrey Onyeka and offensive lineman Kyle Saxlid, who spent several seasons in the CFL. Jeshrin Antwi is a Calgary Stampeder. Receiver Tevin Jones is a Calgary Stampeder. And linebacker Derek Moncrief, a Stampeder as well. Oh, and then another D lineman that I think... he's a controversial guy now, Sheldon, but Miles Brown is a Calgary Stampeder. And the D-line was an area of struggle for the Stampeders in 2024. They weren't able to consistently get to quarterbacks. There's probably going to be some new names, some new guys showing up in training camp that they're going to want to rush that quarterback, and they're going to get it done. And Miles Brown, D-tackle, he's going to be a part of that D-line unit in Calgary. Let's talk about Saskatchewan overall now, who not the busiest team, but damn, making some solid signings. You talked about Tommy Stevens, short yardage, kind of a tough spot for the Rough Riders last year. Well, touchdown Tommy Stevens, now a Saskatchewan Rough Rider, along with Trevor Harris, along with Jake Mayer. The Calgary quarterback room going east on Highway 1, Sheldon.
Yeah, and hopefully he'll be scoring 69-yard touchdowns for the Riders instead of against. Saskatchewan quietly has one of the better QB rooms in the league. I know Jake Mayer has caught a lot of shrapnel from myself, but again, I think this backup role is going to suit him a little better here, and he has another possibly future Hall of Fame quarterback to learn under for at least one season here. So I don't think that can be anything but good for him. And touchdown Tommy. Hopefully, he's got a bonus in his contract for, I think he gets like $250 every touchdown. So let's hope the Riders are paying him a few $1,000.
I love that. Now, I look at the Rider running backs.
You see what AJ Ouellette looks like now?
Yes, he shredded 25 pounds of fat off of him, and this guy looks like he is
Thor.
Fired up. Actual Thor going into 2025, and I kind of wonder if there's a reason for that. I look at that running back room, man. Raquel Armstead, still a Rough Rider. They brought in Kalen Laburn, who late last season, he had some nice games with the Ottawa RedBlacks. He had over 5 yards.
Replacing Armstead.
Yeah, over 5 yards a carry. And then, of course, you brought up AJ Ouellette. There's Thomas Bertrand Houdon, who is still listed on the Rider roster. That is going to be a hotly contested position in training camp, and I guess Saskatoon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that face because you want to be able to watch some training camp action or what?
Yes, I understand why it's in Saskatoon because it's the provincial team and the stadium's in Regina. But the year that they were supposed to have training camp here, COVID canceled the season, and I want to be able to watch training camp. And
when's the last time it was in Regina?
Oh, it was it's probably 5 years before that. Yeah, it's been a long time, and I work across the street from there. I could just take a break and go watch some practice. So
yeah.
Selfishly, but yeah.
That running back battle.
Oh yes, sorry, that's where we're at. I also there's a running back that I kind of wanted to be back that they didn't re-sign, and that's Clint Ratkovich, because I thought he was like a special teams demon, and I kind of sad that he's not back. But when you look at that room, that's a good running back room, and there's a lot of guys who are going to want to eat, and there's only one ball, so be interesting.
And they bring in veteran offensive lineman Sean McEwen to the fold in Regina. Now, this is why looking at rosters now can be silly, because we know all of the injuries that can happen over the course of the season, and the Rough Rider offensive line room has been littered with injuries over the past few years. Fingers crossed that doesn't happen too much across the league. We know it happens to every team, and it's a part of football, I guess. But Jamarcus Hardrick, Sean McEwen, on the same O-line, Logan Ferland, the way that he's come into his own over the past few years, that Rider O-line, who's going to be throwing the ball and who's going to be running the ball, they look very strong, and they look like they're going to be a physical, mean team. And that's basically... I feel like for a few years, teams were trying to build a roster to beat Calgary. Now, I think teams are trying to beat a roster to beat Winnipeg. And this Saskatchewan roster looks like they want to go toe-to-toe with the Bombers. Those are going to be some fun games this year.
Yeah, well, they see them 5 times this year. Well, at least in the regular season and preseason, right? So
a minimum,
and then a minimum, yeah. Hopefully, then there will probably be at least one more game after that, yeah. And then let's not forget that who they got as their new running backs coach, Andrew Harris. So they're going to be a physical running team, and again, when we talk about AJ and his transformation, and that looks like hopefully it's going to get him a little quicker, but at the same time he's kind of got smaller too, so maybe to hit those holes a little better. But he also, he's a power back, and so maybe losing some of that mass is gonna. I'm interested to see how that's going to be on him.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to be playing a different game or what he's going to be doing. But
scoring touchdowns. Let's just hope he's scoring touchdowns.
Yeah, that's what the green and white want, and hopefully it helps him feel a little bit healthier. I think Corey Mace was saying, was it him saying like, man, do I have to tell my running back to stop, lifting 600 pounds or whatever crazy lifts he's doing out there?
Yeah.
It's pretty wild when you have to deal with that. Hey, I did mention those Blue Bombers, and I think this is a nice signing by them, bringing in Peyton Logan, the former Calgary Stampeder. Now, Logan at times has gotten into fumble issues. Dickinson didn't like that. We know that O'Shea won't like that. But they really struggled, I think, when Janarian Grant went to Toronto. The return game wasn't really there for Winnipeg. Mm-hmm. And if Peyton Logan's even able to be slightly above average or average for the Bombers, that's going to be a good addition to that roster.
Yeah, and they had Lucky Whitehead doing returning last year, and he was pretty good at that earlier in his career. So I'm not sure if it was just the returner itself or he just wasn't having the help on the special teams, but I do think Peyton Logan is a dynamite player, and he can return. He can step in and be that running back if something does happen to Oliveira, especially with Augustine moving on to Hamilton there. So yeah, I like that signing. I really do, actually.
Now, I look at the receiver room in Winnipeg. I know Kenny the King is he's off. He's a Hamilton Tiger Cat, right? And the highest paid non-receiver or non-quarterback in the CFL. And I look at that receiver room, and some of the guys have been able to bring in, like Jarrett Stearns, Gavin Cobb, Reggie White Jr., Cobb and Elk, Reggie White and Alouette, Stearns a Rough Rider, also Dylan Mitchell and Edmonton Elk. So I know Dalton Schoen is going to have his position there. Nick Dembski is going to have his position there. But it's going to be quite the wide open battle, I think, to get on the roster at receiver for the Blue Bombers. And that's probably going to be a fun training camp area to watch in Manitoba, man. There's a lot of guys there that can produce.
There's a lot of guys there that can produce, but are they going to be able to get consistency and build that trust with Zach Collaros? That's going to be the thing that's going to be interesting, I think. Just because, when you have Schoen and you have Nick Dembski, if other teams are going to double those guys, then, Zach's going to have to be forced to throw to some people that maybe he doesn't have that consistency with. So I'll be looking at that for sure in the early part of the season.
And now the Bombers also have some CFL experience behind Zach Collaros, because last year, of course, they had Chris Streveler, but he ends up getting hurt. And now they've been able to extend him, but Shea Patterson and Jake Dolegala are also on the Winnipeg roster. Say what you will about those guys and what they've shown on the field, but having some experience behind your starting quarterback is very, very valuable. And clearly the Bombers didn't trust what they had behind Collaros in Terry Wilson in the Grey Cup, and that very well could have gone a long way to changing the outcome, and especially how that fourth quarter went in that game just in November. Matt Schultz was a Calgary Stampeder last year. I thought that he was going to see more time in Calgary. But then he gets hurt, the season kind of falls apart, and then it's, what's the point of having him there? But Matt Schultz is now in Ottawa. He's going to be behind Drew Brown with the RedBlacks, and the RedBlacks also been able to sign veteran defensive back Robert Priester to a deal. So there's some solid names for the RedBlacks. On the other coast, the West Coast, the BC Lions signing a couple linebackers. One, Canadian linebacker, Adam Konar, very familiar last name and a familiar name to Alberta CFL fans. And also bringing in linebacker Micah Awe, signing him to a 2-year deal. I think a couple very good seasons over the last little while for the Stampeders, and back to a team that he's familiar with in BC. Awe back on the field for the Lions. They've been able to add Canadian offensive lineman David Foucault back to the fold in BC, and now Jeremiah Masoli is a BC Lion behind Nathan Rourke. So we see this trend. There's some very familiar names to CFL fans that are in backup roles, but man, the championship teams, they're seeing that value and having experience at number 2.
Yeah, we've lost a lot of quarterbacks for injury and suspension and everything kind of under the sun. And the CFL's kind of always been a league that you need to win. We talk about that Grey Cup rewatch that we just did in 1989. If the Saskatchewan Roughriders didn't have Tom Burgess and Kent Austin, there's no way that they're playing in that game, right? So again, that's why you see teams like Saskatchewan, Edmonton, Montreal, now BC, all of them having capable quarterbacks who have won in this league as their backups. I think that's good for us fans, good for the teams, just in case that starting quarterback does go down.
Staying with BC, I guess, in a way, fullback David Mackey announcing his retirement. We saw, his personality coming up on the YouTube channel and things like that. But he's got a job. He's a CFLPA executive director. So staying in the CFL, but no longer on the field for the BC Lions. Canadian receiver Richie Sindani is taking a year off from the CFL. He's been moved to the retired list. I kind of wonder if that just means he's retired. I don't know how many players just take a year off and then return, but we'll see what happens there. And then Adam Bighill's just the name that I wanted to bring up. He might not be ready to be on the field by Labor Day, but do you think any team is going to take a flyer on him?
I think if he wants to play, he will get that. I just don't know. I don't know if he's going to be signed before the season. I think it might be once kind of he's back and cleared and ready to go, and then he can kind of see which team might have an injury at linebacker or need somebody. And, I think at this stage of the career, if he's gonna want to keep playing, it's gonna want to be with a contender, so he can have a chance to kind of go into Winnipeg and maybe show the Bombers that they shouldn't have moved on from him. But I think that's a time will tell kind of situation, because it seems I get the impression he still wants to play. So we'll see what happens there.
Now, I'll bring this up for Toronto fans. There's going to be a big renovation happening at BMO Field because the 2026 FIFA World Cup is going to have some games in Toronto. So there's a $150 million renovation happening to the stadium. Now, these started in December, and they're going to be wrapped up in August. So the TFC games, the Argo games, are expected to go ahead as scheduled, but fans might need to take some extra time to get into the stadium for the games. But included in this is self-serve tech at concession stands, improved Wi-Fi, kitchen infrastructure, an upgraded playing surface. Aren't we going to be seeing a couple new turf surfaces in the CFL? I think Regina, Calgary, maybe some new surfaces coming up.
Yeah, for sure Calgary is, and I did talk to the CFO of the Riders last offseason, anyway. and he said that it should be this year. So if it's not this year, it'll for sure be next year. But for sure Calgary is getting it theirs done.
And then the installation of a new lounge and a 1,000-person rooftop patio. I don't know if we could get into this rooftop patio for a future Grey Cup, but this year marks 9 years since it was last in Toronto, and then obviously 2026 it makes it 10 years, and that's going to be in Calgary if I'm not mistaken. So then after that, I think we're wide open. Montreal hasn't had one since 2008. We know the issues with the Big O going on there. I kind of wonder if Toronto is going to be a candidate for that Grey Cup. I know that last Grey Cup there, a little bit of a disaster. The game was amazing. And so many times the Grey Cup game is able to somehow get past all the distraction, and the actual game just turns out amazing. Henry Burris over the Calgary Stampeders in overtime in that game as the Ottawa RedBlacks. But the price of the tickets, the way things were poorly attended across the city, and it's just tough because I was only there 4 years earlier for the 100th Grey Cup, which I think was so amazing on so many levels. But we'll see if they're ready to put a bid in for a Grey Cup in the next few years with some of these new renovations happening at BMO.
Well, yeah, either that or Ottawa, because they had it. It's been it's been Regina, BC, Winnipeg, Calgary, all Western teams. Great for us, but not so great for the fans in Eastern Canada who, like you said, it's been a while. Well, I guess it was Hamilton twice, so that kind of takes care.
Ottawa's got some renos happening at TD Place as well, so a lot of interesting things happening.
And I'm really hoping they can get Montreal together because I really want to go to Montreal.
I know. I don't think they can do the game at the Big O.
Without it being like $500 tickets? Yeah, no way.
Well, the Big O...
I mean at McGill.
I don't think they can do that. Which is really unfortunate. I know there's all sorts of rumblings about what they should do with Olympic Stadium. I think they've already put like $8 billion into that damn thing. But I'm reading an article from February of 2024. Quebec's going to go ahead with Olympic Stadium renovations, and it says the demolition of that thing would be even more expensive than renovating it. Previous estimates for this were between $750 million and $1 billion, and taking 4 years to complete. Renovations include dismantling the roof, replacing the technical ring that holds the entire stadium structure together, and then building a new roof. It's insane. That thing's a giant money pit, and but the thing is, like, I was in Montreal a few years ago. Where are they going to put a stadium?
Yeah.
In America, boo. They just like clear a parcel of land outside of town and just put a big old stadium there. That just doesn't seem how we operate here, but I don't think they're going to do that in Montreal. They're just going to fix this thing.
Yeah. Well, and there's revenue sharing, right? The teams are sharing revenue, so if they don't have to put all that extra money into hosting a Grey Cup, and I guess they're winning there. But I know that PKP probably wants to have a Grey Cup there, so they got to figure that out. But when it costs that much money, if they can find a place to put a new stadium, you could build a new stadium for a third of that price tag. So at least they did in Regina. I'm sure now with inflation and everything, it'd be probably double, so maybe $500,000. But
$500,000
or million, sorry, $500 million. That'd be nice, eh? Nice $500,000 stadium.
It would.
Man,
be
you
nice.
know what? I was never there, but one of my favorite stadiums that I've ever seen, and I know it's stupid, but Tempire. I love Tempire Stadium. It just looks so cool on TV.
I agree.
And I thought, if they're going to get a 10th team in the Maritimes, just build a Tempire. Just build that and get it going. But
I seem to remember, was that the Casey Printers era?
Yep.
And the bleachers were just steel. And they were just so loud, and that's the year the Lions won the Grey Cup, 0-5, and then Travis Lulay, they come back and win that Grey Cup. So
it looked like a kind of an intimate soccer stadium kind of, and it was loud, and it was just, I thought it was super cool. But
we made it over 45 minutes. In March,
we got one last thing.
Talking CFL, and there is a big event happening this weekend all across Canada, Sheldon.
Yeah, so it's kind of the kickoff for the new year of the CFL Fans Fight Cancer. It's called the second annual CFL Fans Fight Cancer Fan Summit. So there's an event in BC at the Match Eatery at Starlight Casino. That's 2 p.m. Pacific time. In Edmonton at the First in downtown. Sorry,
First
I don't know.
round.
First round. There you go. First round at 2 p.m. Mountain. In Calgary, Jameson's Brentwood. I hear there's 2 Jamesons, so you're going to go to the Brentwood location. That's closest to the stadium, I believe. That's at 2 p.m. Mountain, and they're doing a $10 cover for the charity. In Regina, it's at the Serb Club at 6 p.m. local. In Winnipeg, it's at the Tavern United downtown at 6 p.m. local. In Hamilton, it's at the Crown and Gavel at 7 p.m. And in Ottawa, at the Senate Tavern on Bank at 6 p.m. as well. And you can also go to the CFLfansfightcancer.com. There's a little QR code there that you can, if you're not able to attend, you want to donate, please feel free to go there.
Is there no Toronto event? I'm just double checking.
Yeah, it doesn't look like, as far as this is the latest they have. I do think, I heard that there was an event in Toronto, but it was already sold out, so maybe that's why they're not, but don't quote me on that. I just believe that's what I heard on the Turf District had a really good kind of preview of all the events with somebody from each of them on it.
Wow.
This last episode, so maybe take a listen to that as well.
Yeah, go listen to our friends at the Turf District, and shout out to everybody that organizes this. This whole CFL Fans Fight Cancer thing has blown up, and it's just unbelievable that it's fans. It's 100% done by the fans. And like over the last, 3-4 years, the amount of money that's been raised on the backs of fans, it really is incredible. And it's become an all year sort of thing. And I know seeing CFL fans in March, seeing each other, many of us haven't seen each other since Grey Cup or even before that. So this is so cool. Go to CFLfansfightcancer.com. Find your city for the CFL Fan Summit, kicking off the fundraising season for CFL Fans Fight Cancer. Well, I'm Travis Currah. He is Sheldon Jones. Buy Canadian, support Canadian, go Canada, go. Rate, review, and subscribe to 2 and Out on your favorite podcatcher. Yes, those big giant US tech sites where you can find 2 and Out. I don't know what else to tell you.
There's a Canada sticker on Diet Coke at Safeway because
I think it's made
here,
in Calgary. And is there a plant in Regina too?
There's for sure a distribution hub here. Okay. I don't know if but support Canadian jobs, drink Diet Coke.
I bought that for you.
You sure did.
Have a great beginning to March, and I'm sure we'll talk to you before the official start of spring. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.